In the heart of Botswana, where the first light of dawn spills gold across endless plains, there lies a realm untouched by time, a place of wild beauty and ever-present danger. This land, known as the Savage Kingdom, stretches as far as the eye can see, a tapestry of golden grasses, thorny acacia, and ancient termite mounds rising like monuments to survival. Here the sun reigns supreme, scorching the earth until it cracks and thirsts for rain. Waterholes shrink beneath its gaze, becoming battlegrounds where life and death are decided with every sip. Each dawn awakens a chorus of life, herds of antelope and zebra stirring in the cool shadows, their hooves etching fresh stories into the dust. Predators and prey share the same stage, bound by the ancient laws of survival. As the sun sets, the savannah transforms. Night cloaks the land in mystery, and glowing eyes pierce the darkness. Every creature listens, alert to the whispers of danger, each night a test of vigilance and cunning. At the heart of this kingdom lies the Great Marsh, a shimmering oasis surrounded by a sea of grass. Here water breathes life into the land, and lush reeds sway in the breeze, sheltering countless creatures. Buffalo and zebra gather in great numbers, drawn by the promise of green. But the marsh is more than a sanctuary. It is a hunting ground where every shadow may conceal a predator's gaze. For generations the lions have ruled these fertile lands. The marsh pride, regal and powerful, command respect and fear. Their golden coats blend with the grass, their roars echo across the plains, a warning to all who would challenge their reign. Yet even kings must remain vigilant. The lion's rule is never absolute, for the kingdom is alive with rivals and threats lurking in the shadows. From the tall grass a new force emerges. The hyenas, cunning, relentless and united, move with silent purpose. Their laughter is the soundtrack of the night, a chilling reminder that power is always contested. The hyenas are more than scavengers. They are strategists, testing the boundaries of lion territory, probing for weakness. Tension crackles in the air as these two families, lion and hyena, circle each other, each vying for dominance. At the heart of this struggle are the leaders. King Sekekama, the brutal lion patriarch, rules with an iron paw, his queen Matsumi ever at his side. Their pride is bound by loyalty and strength, defending their birthright with every breath. The marsh pride's unity is their greatest weapon, but it is also their greatest vulnerability. Every roar, every mark on the land is a declaration. This is our kingdom. Across the border, Zalika, the hyena matriarch, leads her clan with fierce determination. Exiled from the marsh, she survives on the harsh, barren fringes, her resolve hardened by loss and hunger. For Zalika, survival is not enough. She dreams of vengeance and revolution, of reclaiming the lush heart of the kingdom for her clan. Every day is a test of endurance, every night a lesson in patience and cunning. The savage kingdom is a crucible forged by drought, fire, and famine. Scarcity sharpens the struggle, driving animals to desperate measures. Clashes erupt over territory, alliances fracture, and the balance of power shifts with the seasons. In this world, families are torn apart, leaders rise and fall, and only the most adaptable survive. The daily rhythm is one of tension and uncertainty, where every decision can mean life or death. The story of lions and hyenas is a saga of bravery, strategy, and sacrifice, an eternal contest played out beneath the vast African sky, where the land itself seems to hold its breath. Who will claim the ultimate prize and rule this kingdom of bone and blood? The answer is written in the dust, whispered by the wind, and watched over by the silent stars of Botswana. Zalika, the formidable leader of her hyena clan, was a queen without a kingdom, an outcast who had clawed her way to power through hardship and cunning. She led the Sisterhood, a tight-knit band of exiles, each member bound by loyalty and the shared memory of defeat. Driven from their ancestral lands, they were forced to survive on a dry, sandy ridge at the very edge of the savage kingdom, a harsh, unforgiving place where only the most resilient could endure. From this desolate outpost, Zalika and her clan gazed longingly at the lush green paradise of the Great Marsh, a world away from their barren exile. The scent of water drifted on the wind, and the distant thunder of hooves reminded them of what they had lost. Yet the marsh was forbidden, its boundaries fiercely guarded. It belonged to the lions, their ancient rivals, whose strength and numbers had forced the hyenas into exile. The memory of that defeat haunted Zalika, a wound that never healed, fueling her resolve. She bore the scars of battle, each one a testament to her survival and her refusal to surrender. As matriarch, Zalika was more than a leader. She was the heart and mind of her clan, the force that held them together through adversity. Though not the largest or strongest, her intelligence and sharp instincts set her apart. Zalika's patience ran as deep as the night sky, her mind always turning, always planning. She favoured strategy over brute force, teaching her clan to move with caution, to strike with precision, and to wait for the perfect moment. Zalika knew her clan was not yet strong enough to face the marsh pride head-on, so she adapted, turning necessity into strength. She became a mentor, passing on her knowledge to the younger hyenas, her own offspring, and the next generation of the Sisterhood. Under her guidance, the clan became masters of scavenging, learning to snatch scraps from other predators and survive on the margins. Life in the shadows was harsh, but Zalika understood that every hardship was a lesson, every setback a step towards something greater. Her greatest motivation was her family, the bonds of kinship that gave her strength. Among them was her daughter, a young princess whose spirit mirrored her mother's ambition and resilience. Zalika dreamed of a future where her child would not know the pain of exile, but instead inherit a legacy of strength and unity. She was determined that her daughter would never have to live as an outcast, always hungry, always wary of danger. Zalika's vision was clear. She would reclaim a kingdom for her clan, no matter the cost. This dream became the fire that drove her, shaping every decision and every risk she took. Each stolen meal, each small victory was a building block in her plan to restore her clan's strength. Zalika's leadership inspired unity, drawing scattered hyenas to her cause and swelling the ranks of the Sisterhood. Her vision extended beyond survival. She sought to build an army, one that could one day challenge the lions for control of the marsh. While the lions basked in their dominance, Zalika watched from the shadows, learning, adapting, and waiting for their moment of weakness. She tested the boundaries, probing for cracks in the lions' defenses, always careful, always calculating. Through careful observation, she learned the lions' routines, their strengths, and, most importantly, their vulnerabilities. Zalika understood that her greatest weapon was not individual strength, but the power of numbers and unity. Her ultimate ambition was to grow her clan into a formidable force, a wave of spotted fur and powerful jaws, unstoppable in its momentum. She envisioned the day when her army would surge into the marsh, overwhelming the lions and reclaiming what was lost. Zalika's rise was not just a story of survival, but of transformation. Her leadership reshaped the fate of her clan and inspired hope among all hyenas living in the shadows. She was not merely an outlaw queen, she was the spark of a revolution, determined to change the destiny of her kind forever. Zalika's strategy was not born of brute force, but of careful calculation and unity. Each step was mapped out with precision, every risk weighed against the potential reward. The Sisterhood, as her clan was known, operated like a well-oiled machine, each member with a role, each action part of a greater design. Zalika herself was the mastermind, orchestrating the clan's movements and reading the ever-shifting landscape of rival predators. Her lieutenants, seasoned females, acted as scouts and enforcers, keeping the younger hyenas in line and relaying signals across the group. Their first major test was a confrontation with a pack of wild dogs. The wild dogs were swift, disciplined, and fiercely protective of their territory. The Sisterhood watched from the shadows as the dogs executed a flawless hunt, their teamwork a mirror of the hyenas' own aspirations. Zalika signalled her clan to move in only after the wild dogs had brought down their prey. The risk was high. If the dogs turned on them, the cost could be fatal. The Sisterhood's tactic was chaos. The younger hyenas darted in, nipping and yelping, while the older females circled, their whoops and cackles rising in a coordinated crescendo. The psychological pressure was immense, designed to fracture the wild dogs' unity. The wild dogs, though formidable, began to falter under the relentless assault. The Sisterhood's numbers and noise overwhelmed their resolve, forcing them to retreat. Victory belonged to the hyenas. The clan feasted, but more importantly, they learned. Each member felt the surge of confidence that came from outwitting a rival, and the bonds between them grew stronger. The younger hyenas, emboldened by the triumph, practiced their tactics in play, guided by the watchful eyes of their elders. The Sisterhood was evolving, each lesson forging them into a more formidable force. Zalika's next move was expansion. She knew that to secure her clan's future they needed new territory, land rich in opportunity but fraught with danger. The barren sand ridge where they had survived for so long was a prison. To grow strong they had to break free. Zalika led her clan north, into the unknown. The risks were immense. New predators, unfamiliar terrain, and the threat of rival clans. The land they entered was claimed by the Northern Pride, a group of lions less powerful than the infamous Marsh Pride, but still a formidable obstacle. Zalika saw opportunity where others saw danger. She studied the Pride from afar, searching for weaknesses. The Pride was led by Satau, a lioness without a male protector. This imbalance was a chink in the armor of the lion's dominance. Zalika devised a test. She would not wait for scraps. She would challenge the lionesses directly, probing their resolve. The Sisterhood approached a fresh lion kill. Instead of hanging back, they advanced as one, their formation tight, their calls unified. The standoff was electric. The lionesses, outnumbered and uncertain, hesitated. The hyenas pressed forward, their confidence growing with every step. The psychological battle was as fierce as any physical fight. The lionesses, lacking the assurance of a male's presence, wavered. The Sisterhood's whoops and calls echoed across the savannah, amplifying their numbers and resolve. The lions, intimidated and outmaneuvered, were forced to share their prize. For the first time, the hyenas were not mere scavengers, but equals. This moment shifted the balance of power. The Sisterhood had claimed a seat at the table, their dominance recognized by all who watched. The clan established a new foothold, a territory of their own. The emotional high was palpable, pride, relief, and a hunger for more. In this new land, the Sisterhood could grow bolder, their unity and cunning shielding them from the wrath of King Sekekama and other rivals. Yet every victory carried its own risks. The emotional toll of constant conflict weighed on the clan, and tragedy was never far behind. Zalika's ambition was inherited by her daughter, the young princess, eager, bold, and desperate to prove herself. The princess's courage bordered on recklessness. She often pushed ahead, testing the limits of her own strength and the patience of her elders. During a second clash with the wild dogs, her daring became her downfall. She underestimated the enemy's resolve. The wild dogs, defending their pups, fought with a ferocity that stunned the hyenas. The Sisterhood's tactics could not save the princess from the chaos. In the confusion, Zalika's beloved daughter was lost. The pain of her death rippled through the clan, a stark reminder of the cost of ambition. Grief threatened to fracture the Sisterhood, but Zalika's resolve only hardened. The emotional bonds within the group, tested by loss, became the steel that held them together. In the savage kingdom, every gain is shadowed by loss. The Sisterhood's rise sent ripples through the animal kingdom, shifting alliances and igniting new rivalries. Zalika's heartbreak became her strength. The Sisterhood, forged in adversity, stood ready to challenge the old order, cunning, united, and unbreakable. Ruling over the Great Marsh was the formidable King Sekekama, a lion whose very name sent shivers through the grasslands and echoed in the wary glances of every creature that called the marsh home. He was the embodiment of raw power and dominance, his presence alone enough to command respect and instill fear. With a magnificent black mane, thick and imposing, and muscles sculpted by countless battles, Sekekama was a king forged in the crucible of conflict. Every scar on his body told a story of victory, of rivals vanquished and challengers crushed beneath his fury. Sekekama was not a gentle ruler. He was a tyrant ruling with an iron paw and a heart hardened by years of struggle. His reign was built on fear and brutal force. Stories of his savagery spread far beyond the marsh, whispered by hyenas and jackals who had witnessed his wrath firsthand. Sekekama's path to power was not one of inheritance, but of relentless conquest. As a young lion, he and his brother had been exiled from their northern pride, forced to wander as outcasts, but exile only sharpened his ambition. Together the brothers journeyed south, their bond forged in hardship. They faced rival coalitions, outmaneuvered older males, and survived the perils of the wild until they reached the lush marshlands, a territory ripe for the taking. In a decisive battle, Sekekama overthrew the reigning male, seizing the territory and its queen Matsumi for himself. The marsh, with its endless water and abundant prey, became his kingdom. Sekekama's rule was absolute. His primary goal was simple: hold on to power at any cost, and let no one, friend or foe, threaten his reign. Paranoia became his constant companion. He saw threats everywhere, in the shadows of the reeds, in the eyes of his own kin. His suspicion was legendary, and none dared to cross him. Day and night Sekekama patrolled the borders of his domain. His thunderous roar echoed across the marsh, a warning to all: this land belonged to him, and him alone. Any male lion foolish enough to trespass was met with swift, merciless violence. Sekekama's fury was unmatched, and he would fight to the death to defend his claim. Tales of his battles became legend once. A coalition of young males attempted to invade the marsh, seeking to challenge his authority. Sekekama met them head-on, driving them out with such ferocity that the scars of that battle remained etched in the land and in the memory of every survivor. His fierce protection ensured that the riches of the marsh, the plentiful water, the endless herds of buffalo and antelope belonged only to him and his pride. Under his rule the marsh flourished, but every creature lived in the shadow of his dominance. At his side was Matsumi, his queen, and the cornerstone of his dynasty. Their partnership was one of strength and strategy, each relying on the other to maintain their grip on power. Matsumi was no ordinary lioness. She was experienced, fiercely protective, and the mother of Sekekama's cubs, his legacy and his future. Together they led the Marsh Pride, a formidable force of skilled hunters, united by fear and loyalty to their king. The lionesses, under Matsumi's guidance, hunted as a seamless unit, bringing down massive prey and ensuring a constant supply of food for Sekekama and his offspring. Their success fed the pride, but also fueled the king's insatiable hunger for control. Yet Sekekama's protection was selective. Not all in his family enjoyed his favor. He was a merciless father, seeing his own sons not as heirs, but as threats, future rivals who would one day seek to overthrow him, just as he had overthrown others. This brutal philosophy shaped the destiny of his bloodline. Sons grew up in fear, knowing that their strength would one day mark them for exile or worse. Sekekama was infamous for killing any male cubs that were not his own, and for showing no mercy to his adolescent sons. The marsh was littered with the stories of young lions forced to flee or face their father's wrath. When his sons grew strong enough to pose a threat, he would violently banish them, condemning them to a perilous life as nomads, forever haunted by the memory of their father's tyranny. This ruthless strategy secured Sekekama's throne, but it also sowed the seeds of future conflict. Exiled sons became bitter enemies, wandering the wilds, waiting for their chance to return. The king's paranoia created enemies not just beyond his borders, but within his own bloodline. The marsh was a kingdom of plenty, but also a kingdom of fear. Under Sekekama's rule, the marsh thrived, lush, vibrant, and teeming with life. But beneath the surface, every creature, from the smallest antelope to the mightiest lion, lived in the shadow of his cruelty. His legacy was one of prosperity, but also of terror, a kingdom built on strength, stained by fear, and forever shaped by the iron will of its tyrant king. The marsh pride lived a life of plenty under Sekekama's rule, but it was a life governed by his violent temper. Each sunrise brought a new day of tension, as the king's shadow stretched long over the marshland. His methods of control were as much psychological as physical. His mere presence was enough to silence the chattering of cubs and send even the boldest lioness into cautious submission. The lionesses, including Queen Matsumi, moved with careful grace, always aware of Sekekama's moods. A single glare from the king could halt a playful chase or end a dispute over a fresh kill. The pride's hierarchy was enforced with swift, brutal reminders. A snarl, a cuff, or a sudden charge. Even the youngest cubs learned early that the king's word was law, and disobedience was met with swift punishment. But the lion's rule extended beyond his own kind. The antelope herds, ever watchful, grazed at the marsh's edge, their ears flicking at the distant sound of a lion's roar. They knew the cost of straying too close. Zebra bands, too, kept to the open, wary of the pride's patrols. Even the baboons in the trees fell silent when Sekekama passed below, clutching their young and waiting for the danger to move on. For the smaller creatures, jackals, mongoose, and warthogs, life under the lion's rule meant living in the margins. Jackals waited at the edge of every lion kill, hoping for scraps but never daring to approach while the king fed. Vultures circled above, patient and opportunistic, knowing that Sekekama's wrath could turn on them if they descended too soon. Within the pride, the lionesses shared whispered moments of resistance. Queen Matsumi, wise and resilient, would sometimes shield the youngest cubs from Sekekama's anger, distracting him with a feigned hunt or a show of submission. Satau, the mother of Sekekama's banished sons, mourned quietly, her eyes always searching the horizon for a glimpse of her lost cubs. The lionesses formed silent alliances, supporting each other in small acts of defiance, sharing food, hiding cubs, or comforting the exiled. Sekekama's rule was absolute, but it was not unchallenged. The adolescent males, growing stronger each day, felt the weight of the king's suspicion. Their playful sparring was watched with a wary eye, and as their manes thickened, so did the tension. The day Sekekama turned on his own sons was seared into the memory of every animal in the marsh. The chase was swift and merciless, the 6 young lions driven into the wild, their mothers' cries echoing across the grasslands. The banished sons were not the only ones to feel the sting of the king's rule. The hyena clan lurking at the kingdom's edge watched and waited. They saw the pride's strength, but also its fractures. The hyenas whispered among themselves, plotting, testing the boundaries, and stealing what scraps they could. Even the buffalo herds, massive and formidable, moved with caution, knowing that a single misstep could draw the pride's attention. One day, 2 nomadic brothers, driven by hunger and the dream of power, crossed into Sekekama's domain. Their arrival sent ripples through the marsh. The antelope scattered, the birds took flight, and the pride braced for violence. Sekekama met the challenge with fury, his roar shaking the reeds. The battle was fierce, witnessed by every creature in the kingdom. When the dust settled, the nomads were gone, and the king stood victorious, his rule reaffirmed. For a time, the pride thrived. Buffalo hunts were successful, and the lionesses raised their cubs under the king's watchful gaze. The marshland seemed secure, a fortress ruled by fear and strength. But beneath the surface, resistance simmered. The hyenas grew bolder, the exiled sons learned to survive, and the other animals watched, waiting for the day when the king's rule might falter. In the savage kingdom, power was never absolute for long. The lion's rule of fear shaped every life. from the smallest mouse to the mightiest buffalo, and as the sun set over the marsh, all eyes turned to the shadows, where new threats gathered, and the promise of change lingered in the air. While the marsh pride flourished under the golden sun, the northern pride withered in the shadows. In the heart of this fading kingdom stood Satau, a lioness once revered, now left to face the silence of abandonment. Satau, the noble queen, carried herself with dignity even as her world unravelled. She remembered the days when her roar commanded respect, when her pride gathered around her, strong and united. But those memories were now tinged with pain. Sekekama, once her king and companion, had shattered her trust. She watched him walk away, his mane catching the last light, leaving her heart heavy with betrayal. He had chosen the lush promise of the great marsh and Matsumi, its queen, over the loyalty and love of Satau and her pride. The ache of abandonment echoed in every lonely night. When Sekekama returned, it was not to heal old wounds, but to banish Satau's 6 sons, her hope for the future, leaving her nearly alone. She felt the sting of loss, not just as a leader, but as a mother. Her once mighty pride was reduced to herself, her loyal sister, and her last remaining daughter. Each day Satau looked into their eyes, searching for strength, determined to protect what little family she had left. Without a king's protection, and with too few hunters, Satau's pride became exposed. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down, her every decision a matter of life and death. Hunger gnawed at them. Satau led desperate hunts, her muscles aching, her spirit refusing to yield. But the great herds sensed their weakness and kept their distance. Buffalo and zebra, once within their grasp, now seemed impossibly far. Each failed hunt deepened Satau's worry. She wondered, how much longer can we endure? Forced by hunger, Satau made a painful choice. The proud hunters became scavengers, searching for scraps left by others. She felt humiliation burn inside her, but survival demanded humility. Satau learned to watch the skies for vultures, to follow the scent of death on the wind. She taught her daughter to be patient, to wait for the right moment to steal a meal. They crept through the grass, eyes fixed on leopards and wild dogs feasting. Satau's heart pounded as she led her family to snatch what they could, always wary of retaliation. Each stolen meal was a lesson in humility and cunning. Satau realized that survival sometimes meant letting go of pride. But this new life was dangerous and unreliable. The pride grew weaker, their bodies thin, their eyes haunted by hunger. Satau wondered if she had failed them. Their vulnerability did not go unnoticed. Zalika, the cunning hyena matriarch, watched from the shadows, her clan growing bolder with each passing day. The hyenas saw Satau's pride as easy prey. Satau braced herself, her instincts sharpened by fear and defiance. Zalika's clan began to harass them, circling, taunting, testing the limits of Satau's resolve. Satau stood her ground, but inside she felt the cold grip of dread. The hyenas no longer feared the lions. Satau saw it in their eyes, a new confidence, a challenge to her fading authority. One day, as Satau and her family fed on a rare kill, Zalika's clan approached, bold and unyielding. Satau's heart raced as she faced the hyenas, her family trembling behind her. Outnumbered and exhausted, Satau was forced to submit. She watched the hyenas feast, her pride wounded deeper than any physical scar. The sight of lions cowering before hyenas marked a turning point in the savage kingdom. Satau felt the world shifting beneath her paws. Satau's reign was crumbling. She gazed across the barren land, her spirit battered but not broken. She whispered to her daughter, "We must endure, we must learn." Then the final blow came. The rains failed and the land cracked beneath the sun. Satau watched the herds vanish, their hooves thundering towards distant water. The great migration left the northern pride with nothing but dust and memories. Satau's heart ached as she realized the world she knew was gone. Then, as if fate had not finished its cruel work, Sekekama and the marsh pride swept north, following the herds, invading Satau's last refuge. Satau's home was overrun. She watched as her former king and his new queen claimed the land she had fought so hard to defend. Displaced and defeated, Satau gathered her family. She pressed her nose to her daughter's fur, drawing comfort from the warmth of kinship. Homeless, they became exiles, wandering the wastelands, each step a testament to their resilience. Satau's thoughts turned inward. Strength is not always in victory, but in survival, in love, in hope. They roamed the barren badlands, uncertain of what tomorrow would bring. Satau learned to find beauty in small moments, a cool breeze, a shared meal, the comfort of her daughter's purr. As the sun set on her kingdom, Satau looked back one last time. She had lost her sons, her pride, and her land, but she had not lost her will to endure. In the silence of exile, she discovered a new kind of strength, the courage to begin again. As the relentless weeks stretched into months, the savage kingdom was seized by a drought so fierce that it seemed to drain the very life from the land. The sun, unyielding and merciless, scorched the earth until it split open, and the once verdant grasslands faded into brittle yellow dust that swirled with every gust of wind. Water-holes, lifelines for all who roamed these plains, shrank to muddy, shrinking puddles before vanishing entirely, leaving only cracked mud as a memory of what once was. Every creature, predator and prey alike, was pushed to the edge of endurance, their bodies gaunt, their movements slow, their eyes searching desperately for relief. The great herds of buffalo and wildebeest, the heartbeat of the savannah and the very lifeblood of the predators who shadowed them, began a desperate, dust-choked migration, driven by the scent of rain and the hope of green pastures far beyond the horizon. For the rulers of this kingdom, the lions and the hyenas, the drought was more than a hardship. It was a crucible that sharpened their rivalry and forced new strategies for survival. The marsh pride, once secure in their lush domain, now faced a barren wasteland and were forced to abandon their stronghold. The great marsh, stripped of prey and water, was no longer a sanctuary, but a graveyard of broken reeds and dust. King Sekekama led his pride northward, trailing the migrating herds, each step a gamble in unfamiliar territory. Their journey brought them into the weakened Northern Pride's territory, resulting in the final displacement of Satau and her family, who were already battered by hunger and loss. The Marsh Pride found food in this new land, but every hunt was a risk, every shadow a threat, for they no longer knew the secrets of the terrain. Far from their home, the Pride was exposed, their confidence shaken, their vulnerability growing with each passing day. King Sekekama, driven by hunger, focused on the hunt, leaving his queens and cubs with less protection than ever before. For Zalika and the Sisterhood, the drought was a strange blessing. Where others saw death, they saw opportunity. And the hyenas, masters of adaptation, thrived as the weak fell. Their keen noses led them to carcasses before the vultures could descend. Their skills as scavengers, unmatched in the kingdom, allowed them to feast, while others starved, turning every loss into their gain. The relentless heat and vanishing water claimed the lives of many, zebra, antelope, even the young and old of the herds, leaving their bodies scattered across the plains. The land became a patchwork of carcasses, a grim banquet for the hyena clan, who grew stronger with every meal. As the lions grew gaunt and desperate, the hyenas flourished, their bodies robust, their spirits emboldened. Zalika's clan swelled in number, patrolling the dusty plains with new confidence, their unity and cunning making them a force to be reckoned with. The abundance of food drew more hyenas to their ranks, strengthening the Sisterhood's grip on the land. Quietly, the balance of power began to shift, the hyenas' numbers and strength tipping the scales in their favor. In the desolate Badlands, where even the wind seemed to carry hunger, a new alliance was forged in desperation. Satau, the homeless queen, and her two remaining kin wandered the wasteland, their bodies frail, their hope nearly extinguished. In their search for survival, they crossed paths with two nomadic males, brothers once exiled by Sekekama, now shadows of their former strength. The nomads, too, were gaunt and weary, their hunts often ending in failure without the support of a pride. Hunger and isolation had driven them to the brink, their survival hanging by a thread. In a final act of desperation, Satau and the outcast kings joined forces, forging a fragile alliance born of necessity. The males offered protection and strength, while Satau offered the hope of a new pride, a chance to reclaim what was lost. In the heart of the drought, as the kingdom teetered on the edge, this partnership promised not only survival, but the seeds of revenge and rebirth, proof that even in the harshest times, the struggle for power and life never ends. The death of her daughter had changed Zalika forever. In the cold silence of the night, grief twisted into something fierce, a resolve as sharp as the thorns that lined the marsh. She was no longer just a mother in mourning. She was a leader reborn, her heart hardened by loss and her mind sharpened by vengeance. Her sorrow became her strength. Each memory of her daughter fueled a relentless determination. Zalika's eyes, once soft with hope, now burned with a cold, unbreakable resolve. The time for patience and planning was over. The drought had been cruel, but it had also been a crucible. Her clan, once scattered and weak, had grown strong, hardened by hunger, united by survival. The Sisterhood, once a band of outcasts, had become a force to be reckoned with. The spoils of the drought had fattened the clan, their numbers swelled, their bellies full, their spirits high. Zalika saw her moment of opportunity glimmering on the horizon. The marsh pride, once invincible, was now stretched thin. King Sekekama and his males patrolled the far reaches of their expanded territory, leaving the heart of the pride exposed. The lionesses, led by Queen Matsumi, were left alone with their cubs, vulnerable, isolated, and unaware of the storm gathering in the darkness. Zalika's mind raced with strategy. She knew the pride's weakness, and she would exploit it. The revolution would begin tonight. Under the cover of darkness, she summoned her clan. The air vibrated with anticipation as hyenas gathered from every corner of the marsh, their eyes glinting with purpose. The Sisterhood, once fractured, now stood united, an army of spotted hyenas, each one ready to fight for their queen and their future. Old rivalries were set aside, alliances were forged in the fire of shared suffering. Zalika's leadership was unquestioned, her vision clear. Their whoops and cries shattered the silence, echoing across the marsh as they marched. An unstoppable tide of fur and fury. This was no mere raid for scraps. It was a full-scale invasion, a revolution that would shake the foundations of the savage kingdom. Their target was clear, the lionesses of the marsh pride, the very heart of their enemy's power. Zalika's goal was not just to win territory, but to shatter the lionesses' confidence, to break their spirit, and to drive them from the land they once ruled. With a thunderous charge, Zalika led the attack herself, her mind set on a single purpose, to reclaim her kingdom and avenge her loss. The battle erupted in a frenzy of teeth and claws. The hyenas struck with precision and ferocity, their teamwork overwhelming the lioness's desperate defense. The hyena army descended in a wave of coordinated chaos, their numbers and unity turning the tide. The lionesses, though fierce and powerful, were surrounded, outnumbered and outmaneuvered at every turn. The hyenas swarmed, biting and snapping, their unity a stark contrast to the lions' isolated struggles. The air was thick with the sounds of battle, snarls, roars, and the cries of the vanquished. Matsumi and her sisters fought with the courage of legends, defending their cubs with every ounce of strength, but the odds were impossible. The battle raged, a terrifying spectacle of noise and fury, a violent clash that would decide the fate of the marsh and all who called it home. In the end, it was not just numbers, but Zalika's strategy and the unity of her clan that won the day. The lionesses, battered and broken, were forced to retreat. Scattering in panic, the once mighty marsh pride fled to save themselves and their young, their reign shattered in a single night. Zalika and her clan stood victorious in the heart of the great marsh. The revolution was complete. The hyenas celebrated, their calls rising in a triumphant chorus that echoed across the kingdom. They had done the unthinkable. They had defeated the mighty marsh pride. Their victory was not just for themselves, but for every outcast and underdog in the savage kingdom. The balance of power had shifted. As dawn broke over the marsh, the world was changed. The hyenas, once exiles, now ruled the land. Zalika, the outlaw queen, had returned from exile and overthrown the old rulers. Her revolution had rewritten the laws of the wild. The lion's reign of terror was over. In its place, a new order had risen, one forged in loss, unity, and the unbreakable will of a queen who refused to surrender. The savage kingdom would never be the same. As the first golden rays of dawn stretched across the great marsh, a gentle mist rose from the earth, shimmering with the promise of change. The air was alive with the calls of awakening animals, each voice echoing the arrival of a new era. The great marsh, once ruled by the thunderous roars of lions, now pulsed with the laughter and unity of hyenas. The land itself seemed to breathe easier, as if relieved by the end of a long and bitter struggle. Zalika, the patient and strategic queen, stood at the heart of her clan. Her eyes reflected the rising sun, filled with both pride and the weight of new responsibility. She had not only claimed victory, but had redefined what it meant to lead. Her sisterhood, once scattered and hungry, now moved as one, an unbreakable force. Their unity was their strength, and their future was bright with hope. No longer did they scavenge in the shadows. Now they feasted openly, their bellies full and their spirits high, basking in the warmth of a new day. The youngest among them tumbled and played, safe in the heart of the marsh. Their laughter mingled with the morning breeze, a promise that the next generation would know only strength and belonging. Across the kingdom, animals watched and learned. The antelope, once wary of lion ambushes, now observed the hyena's discipline and teamwork. Even the clever jackal paused, marveling at the new order where intelligence and cooperation triumphed over brute force. For the marsh pride, the dawn brought only silence and sorrow. Their roars had faded, replaced by the quiet rustle of grass as they nursed their wounds. Queen Matsumi and her lionesses, once the embodiment of power, now moved with caution. Their eyes, once fierce, now flickered with uncertainty as they navigated a world that no longer belonged to them. When King Sekekama returned, he found his kingdom changed beyond recognition. The land he once ruled with an iron paw was now marked by the footprints of his rivals. Though his mane still bristled with power, his authority was shaken. The animals of the marsh watched him with new eyes, no longer as a tyrant, but as a leader humbled by defeat. The lions could no longer claim the land as their own. Now they moved carefully, sharing space with their former enemies, learning to survive in a world where the rules had changed. The marsh became a place of uneasy peace, where rival predators eyed each other warily, each aware that the balance could shift again at any moment. The era of lion supremacy had ended, not with a whimper, but with a lesson written in the dust. No power lasts forever, and every dawn brings new possibilities. Far from the marsh, in the silent wastelands, a quiet hope began to stir. Tracks in the sand told stories of survivors and dreamers forging new alliances in the shadows. The abandoned queen Satau, joined by two nomadic kings, found strength in unity. Their roars echoed across the plains, a signal to all that a new force was rising. With the protection and power of her new allies, Satau's pride began to thrive. The cubs, once hungry and afraid, now played in the grass, watched over by vigilant guardians. The pride was reborn, no longer scavengers but hunters, their future bright beneath the endless sky. This new coalition, forged in hardship, watched the horizon with hope and determination. Their eyes gleamed with the promise of reclaiming what was lost or conquering something greater. Satau, once an outcast, now led her pride with courage. Her journey was a beacon to all who had been cast aside, a reminder that every ending is a new beginning. The savage kingdom, scarred by war and ambition, was alive with possibility. The land itself seemed to whisper of renewal as animals of every kind adapted to the new order. The old boundaries had faded, replaced by a tapestry of intersecting lives and shifting alliances. Every creature, from the smallest bird to the mightiest predator, played a part in the unfolding story. Zalika, the new queen, watched over her domain with vigilance. She knew that every dawn brought new challenges, but also new hope. Sekekama's pride, though wounded, was not defeated. Their roars still echoed, a promise that they would rise again. And in the distance, Satau's pride gathered strength, their eyes fixed on the horizon, ready to shape the future. The struggle for the savage kingdom was far from over. Every animal, every pride, every clan had a stake in what was to come. As the sun climbed higher, its light touched every corner of the kingdom. A new chapter had begun, one filled with hope, resilience, and the endless promise of the wild. The savage kingdom would never be the same, but in its ever-changing heart, life would always find a way. As the seasons turned, the savage kingdom faced a new and merciless trial. The rains, once faithful and life-giving, failed to appear. Day by day the sun grew fiercer, baking the land until the marsh's green heart withered into dust. Ponds shrank to muddy puddles. The reeds, once tall and lush, lay brittle and broken. The air, once alive with the calls of birds and frogs, fell eerily silent. Thirst became the great equalizer. Hyenas, lions, antelope, and jackals all felt the same burning ache in their throats. The shrinking waterholes became battlegrounds where old enemies met not with roars of dominance, but desperate, wary truce. For a few precious moments each day, predator and prey drank side by side, their reflections mingling in the muddy water, a fragile peace born of necessity. But scarcity bred tension. Fights erupted, not over territory or pride, but for a mouthful of water. The lions, weakened by defeat, clung to what little remained of their former power, guarding the last deep pools with grim determination. The hyenas, led by Zalika, adapted with cunning. They dug into dry riverbeds, finding hidden springs where others saw only cracked earth. Their unity and resourcefulness became their greatest weapons, allowing their clan to endure while others faltered. Some animals, unable to adapt, vanished from the marsh, their trails lost in the dust. Others formed unlikely alliances, lone lionesses joining hyena patrols, jackals trailing the powerful for scraps and protection. The lines between rivalries blurred, survival demanding cooperation over conflict, yet through hardship resilience blossomed. The hyena cubs, taught by the Sisterhood, learned to track the scent of water in the wind, to dig and scrape and never give up hope. Even the lions, once rulers, learned humility, sharing water, learning from their old foes, and finding new strength in unity. Above it all, the land itself waited, parched, silent, but not defeated. For in the savage kingdom every drought is followed by rain, every hardship by renewal. As the last drops disappeared and the animals looked to the sky with longing, a distant rumble promised that the story was not yet over. In the crucible of drought, the true strength of the kingdom was revealed, not in power but in adaptation, resilience, and the will to survive together. The savage kingdom endures. As the sun finally slips below the horizon, the savage kingdom is cloaked in darkness. But the night is not a time of rest. It is the hour of the hunters. Under a sky heavy with stars and the promise of distant rain, the marsh comes alive in a different way. Hyenas move first, their eyes gleaming gold in the moonlight. Zalika leads her clan with silent signals, ears flicking, bodies weaving between shadows. They fan out, using the cover of darkness to mask their approach. In the night their laughter is muted, replaced by soft grunts and the crunch of dry reeds beneath padded feet. Here teamwork is everything. The hyenas communicate with the subtlest cues, surrounding herds of antelope and zebra, steering them toward hidden pitfalls or the waiting jaws of an ambush. But the lions are watching too. Sekekama's pride, weakened but not broken, slips through the darkness with practiced stealth. Their amber eyes scan for movement, their whiskers twitching at the faintest shift in the wind. Each step is deliberate, every muscle tense. They use the cover of tall, brittle grass, moving as one, silent, patient, deadly. The night magnifies every sound. The snap of a twig, the rustle of feathers, the distant call of a jackal. Prey animals, exhausted by drought, are jumpy and desperate. They bunch together, relying on numbers and vigilance, but fear is a scent the hunters know well. Sometimes lion and hyena cross paths in the gloom. Rivalries flare in the darkness, fights erupt over a fresh kill, the air filled with snarls and snapping teeth, but often the real danger is unseen. Crocodiles lurk in the last muddy pools, their eyes just above the surface. A sudden slip, a misstep, and even the fiercest hunter can vanish without a trace. For every hunt there is risk, for every victory a price. In the inky black, senses are sharpened. Every smell, every sound, every flicker of movement could mean life or death. The hyenas rely on their stamina, chasing prey for miles, outlasting even the strongest. The lions count on power, a single explosive charge to bring down the weak or unwary. As dawn approaches, the night's drama fades. Some return with blood on their muzzles, a hard-won meal. Others limp back, empty-bellied, to wait for another chance. In the savage kingdom, the hunt never truly ends, and as the stars fade, all know when the world is darkest, that is when the true hunters rise. Dawn breaks over the savage kingdom, painting the marsh in soft gold and pale blue. As the grown hunters return, the youngest members of the pride and the clan stir to life. Today, the cubs begin their first true lesson. For the lion cubs, the morning is a classroom of shadows and light. Their mothers watch with careful eyes as the little ones stalk through the brittle grass, oversized paws silent on the earth. A twig snaps, a lesson in stealth. The cubs freeze, wide-eyed, as a startled bird flutters away. They crouch lower, tails flicking, learning that patience and silence are as vital as strength. Nearby, the hyena cubs gather around Zalika's sister, who leads them to a patch of muddy ground. Here the scents of last night's hunt linger. The cubs sniff eagerly, wrinkling their noses at the sharp tang of blood. One bold cub nips at a discarded bone, testing tiny jaws against something unyielding. Another tumbles with a sibling, their playful growls echoing lessons in dominance and teamwork. Mistakes are inevitable. A lion cub pounces too soon, missing a grasshopper that leaps away. The others tease, but their mother's low purr reminds them. Every failed hunt is a step toward mastery. A hyena cub tries to drag a stick twice its size, stumbling, but is nudged gently by an elder. Learn to use your strength, not just your teeth. Triumphs come in small victories. A cub manages to sneak up on a dozing sibling, earning a rare approving nuzzle. Another manages to crack a fragile bone, savouring the taste of marrow for the first time. But the harshest lessons come unbidden. The shadow of a vulture sweeps overhead, and all cubs scatter, instincts sharpened by fear. The world is full of threats, and the elders teach them to always be wary, to never stray too far. As the sun climbs higher, the lessons wind down. Exhausted, the cubs collapse in tangled heaps, watched over by vigilant eyes. Today, they have learned that survival is not only about claws and teeth, but about patience, practice, and the wisdom passed down through generations. In the savage kingdom, even the smallest must learn quickly, for here every lesson is written in dust, blood, and bone, and only the cleverest, the bravest, will survive to see another dawn. High above the savage kingdom, on the crooked limbs of a dead acacia, the vultures wait. Their eyes, sharp as obsidian, miss nothing, a silent council watching the drama unfold below. As lions and hyenas clash, as cubs learn and hunters fail, the vultures bide their time. For them, patience is survival. From their lofty perch, the vultures are both witness and judge. They see the lion pride's triumphs, the hyena clan's cunning, and the endless struggle written in fur and fang. Every battle, every fall, every careless cub or wounded elder, these are opportunities. The vultures do not hunt, but their presence shapes the world below. Their shadow is a silent warning. Nothing goes unnoticed, nothing is wasted. When the day's heat brings hunger, the vultures circle, riding invisible currents. They descend only when the ground is still, when the victors have fed and moved on. Bones picked clean by hyenas are further stripped by hooked beaks, and scraps overlooked by lions become a feast for the patient. Their work is quiet but essential. By cleaning the land of what remains, the vultures prevent the spread of sickness, keeping the kingdom in balance. Sometimes their arrival is challenged. A lioness may snarl, a hyena may snap, but the vultures know when to wait and when to dart in. They are neither friend nor foe, but a constant presence, reminding all who walk the marsh that in this realm every life and every death serves a purpose. As the sun climbs and the cubs sleep, the vultures take flight again, searching for the next sign of struggle, the next echo of defeat. They are the kingdom's quiet scavengers, the keepers of its final lessons. In the savage kingdom even the sky has eyes. Night falls heavy over the marsh, cloaking the savage kingdom in a shroud of anticipation. The air vibrates with unease. A storm of paws and claws is brewing. For weeks the hyenas have grown bolder, their numbers swelling, their laughter echoing in the darkness. Led by the cunning Zalika, their revolution is no longer a whisper but a roar. Across the cracked earth the lions gather. Sekekama, the tyrant king, stands at the head of his pride. His mane bristles with authority, but beneath the golden fur doubt flickers. The lions are hungry, battle-worn, and the hyenas have never been so relentless. The confrontation begins at the water's edge, a lifeline turned battleground. Zalika's hyenas fan out, flanking the lions with disciplined precision. Their alliance with rogue jackals and a handful of desperate vultures for information has turned the tide. Tonight they fight not just for scraps, but for survival and dominion. The first clash is thunderous. Lionesses charge, muscles rippling, their roars splitting the night. Hyenas meet them head-on, jaws flashing, united by rage and desperation. The ground trembles beneath the fury of ancient rivals. Cubs are herded to safety, their eyes wide with fear. Satau, the abandoned queen, stands guard over the youngest, her heart torn between vengeance and hope. Alliances are tested. Some lions hesitate, weary of Sekekama's rule, uncertain if he can lead them to victory. Among the hyenas, old grudges are set aside. For one night they are a single force, driven by a vision of freedom. Blood darkens the mud. The stakes are absolute. Victory means survival. Defeat means extinction. As the battle rages, the vultures circle, watching, waiting. The marsh echoes with the cries of the wounded, the defiant, the fallen. In a moment of chaos, Zalika and Sekekama meet at the heart of the fray. Their struggle is brutal, teeth and claws, strength against cunning. Around them their kin fight with everything they have left, but it is Zalika's strategy that prevails. Her hyenas outmaneuver the lions, cutting off their retreat, forcing surrender. When dawn breaks, the marsh is quiet. The hyenas stand victorious, battered but unbroken. The lions, defeated, retreat to the shadows, their reign ended. The vultures descend, their patience rewarded, as the fallen become part of the cycle. In the aftermath, alliances shift. Satau leads the lionesses away, vowing to reclaim their place one day. For now the hyenas rule, not with fear, but with the hard-won respect of those who have survived the final stand. In the savage kingdom, power is never permanent. Every dawn brings new rulers, new hope, and new dangers, but for this day the hyenas have claimed their place in the sun. The kingdom endures, the struggle continues, and the sky, as always, watches it all.